away we go.
Alrighty. So, hello everyone, and welcome back to Paranormal. Today we are here with John Bullard and Stormy Daniels.
Hello, everybody.
Took me a large.
How are y'all?
Good. Hey, thanks for taking the time to meet with us today. So I know you guys got a busy schedule.
We do, but we're glad to be here. I know the first time I did your podcast about the house in between, you guys asked some really good questions, so I'm excited to be back on.
Oh, we appreciate that. I probably did not ask good questions. I would assume that was Courtney.
No, you ask good questions too. You're fine.
Yeah, I'm more like example-wise. Tell me about this doll in the background Stormy's got there.
That's Susan.
Susan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she actually belongs to John.
Oh, yeah?
Somehow she snuck over there with Stormy and she won't come back.
She likes me a lot better.
Nice.
All right.
John, where did you get this?
So the doll is actually from a private collector who's pretty famous. So if you're familiar with Ed and Lorraine Warren, obviously this is not from Ed and Lorraine, but John Zaffis had a collection, and back in 2011 there was a cancer charity event, and actually got her out of the charity event. So Susan is her name. She's one of my prized possessions. I've had her for 9 years now. And whenever you get a haunted object, you never know if there's some validity to it, if there's actually an attachment, But ever since I've had the doll, I usually kept her at the house in between, actually, is where I usually kept her in a case. And she's made Marines jump, 250-pound Marines. Caesar, I'm going to give him a shout out if he's watching the podcast. So this, when you have a Marine jump at you, I'm not a big guy, so I got scared and I was petrified. But she's made people cry, emotional. So very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. And whenever she first met Stormy, Stormy did not like Susan. They were standoffish. They did not interact. But as she grew to know Susan, they've got a bond now. So Susan actually has her own Instagram page. It's ridiculous, but it's amazing. So Spooky Babes Susan, if you go on Instagram, you can check her out. She goes on yachts. She rides in Rolls Royces. She lives the paranormal dream. So she's living better than most of us.
She only flies first class.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow, we'll have to. Yes. I'll have to make sure I tag that on the podcast.
Yes, tag.
Yeah. She's pretty active now. She's not very happy with somebody who's in my house now, and she's letting us know.
Okay.
Wow. So it's a possessed doll, basically, if I get it correctly, or it's got some kind of energy around it.
Yeah, she definitely has some energy. We had her cards read last week. She told the reader, Carly, that she wanted to stay with me and help us communicate. I think John knows the history a little better than I do, but apparently she belonged to a little girl who passed away. And I guess the energy is thought to be her. But she interacts. We have her on video talking and moving and all sorts of crazy stuff. And she tends to pick somebody out that she doesn't like and fuck with them. She was at dinner with me the other night, and I had to move her because the bartenders got uncomfortable because he could see her across the room. And then the next night she went to dinner with me, and she blinked for a friend of mine.
Oh, wow.
Oh, God.
So it's wild stories, but if you're around the doll, it's interesting to see people, skeptics and people who are into the paranormal, because again, you don't know haunted objects. Is there any validity behind it? Is this actually, a doll that has an attachment to it? But, I would think, for as long as I've had her, for as many people who have interacted with her, she's definitely, she's got some credibility. She's got some street cred in the paranormal.
Yeah.
Wow.
I also feel like it's just so fun for you guys to watch, like, the interesting interactions that Susan has with other people. Like, whether she goes around and scares them or not, I feel like that would be kind of, like, funny or just interesting to see.
Yeah, she also has the opposite effect. Like, she'll also make people strangely attached to her. Like, the first night that we met her, I didn't want anything to do with her, but I don't really know if that was personal or just that I don't like dolls in general. Like, even as a kid, I didn't play with dolls. I don't like dolls. My daughter's the same way. She doesn't like dolls. And our friend Justin, who's on the show with us, was immediately fixated on her. And he carried her around all night and, like, was sad to leave her and, like, was kind of depressed a little bit afterwards. And then the same thing happens with the girl who we had read her cards. she asked to hold her and wanted to hold her, and she sent me a text. It was like, I forgot to tell Susan bye. I was like, okay.
Wow. Well, we'll have to
And it's
watch
weird
during
too.
this
We have
talk.
this whole saying also. Everybody's just okay with Susan. So like if we're flying with her and we take her out, like a guy next to us on the plane one time said, "Oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful child," and like we were leaving Tampa, and she gets a car seat everywhere she goes. Believe it or not, she has COVID mask. Like it's the whole thing, right? She's beginning to be expensive. But this attendant that was letting us out of the parking garage, like when we pulled up, he said, "Wow, that is a beautiful child. Does she talk yet?" And I'm thinking, like, okay, does he realize it's a doll, or is he so senile that he really thinks this is a real child? And he continued to ask us questions, and it really I was confused. He had me perplexed. And then he said, "Well, what did she say?" And then as we're leaving, he's like, "Oh, she looks just like her mom." I'm like, "Okay, we got to get out of here. This is too much."
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh gosh.
We'll have to watch during the podcast, see if she moves at all.
Yeah, I won't be entirely surprised. My daughter came through a minute ago. She's like, "Are you really going to have her sit behind you?" It's like, if she moves, they'll tell me.
So, Stormy, how did you get involved in the paranormal?
So I basically had a lot of things happen to me my whole life. I think everybody has a very similar story if they're involved in paranormal. And same thing, everybody has heightened intuition, like think of somebody and they call, just getting feelings, going someplace and getting a weird vibe, or knowing what song's going to come on the radio next, that kind of thing, but just a little bit more than most people. But I had about one or two huge things happen every year my whole life, like stuff that makes you go, that was real, that's crazy. And if you go to our Instagram and scroll down, you'll actually see this video I took of a ceiling in a hotel room about 10 years ago, and there's no explanation for it. So stuff like that, like one or two big things a year, but very unexpected, so I never really caught it. And then I would, like, a couple days would go by and I would talk myself down and try to find an explanation, turn it off, whatever. And about a year and a half ago, I moved into a house in the Garden District in New Orleans that was extremely haunted. It was very, very active. It did not like my boyfriend at the time. It let us know. It got more and more protective and more active, and more things happen. You name it, it happened there. Like voices, knocking, scratching, things moving, or like breaking, should I say, light bulbs exploding, batteries draining, blood running down the walls, like all sorts of like really crazy stuff. And he started exhibiting very strange behavior. I put cameras in the house. I got some pretty wild stuff. It eventually led to the end of that relationship, but he didn't believe me. So our friend Justin, who's on the show with us, also lives in New Orleans. There were 22 people who stepped foot in that house in the 10 months that I lived there, and 21 of them had pretty substantial experiences there. And Justin was one of them. So we were talking, and I was very upset that my ex didn't believe me. He thought I was crazy. I was imagining it, that I was using it to get him back, or just all the things that people say, but he was extremely nasty about it. And the one thing that I can't stand is to be called a liar. I mean, I've sort of built this whole other side, about telling the truth. And so to have somebody so close to me adamantly saying that I was lying or crazy or whatever, I knew that I had to do something. And at the same time, it had such a detrimental effect on him, our relationship, and even my own health. Like, I mean, it was pretty intense. I couldn't help but think that this is probably happening to other people. And if I could prove that it was real, that I could also be like, screw you to my ex, and maybe do something to help other people, use my platform to do that. And so Justin and I started Spooky Babes, and the very first investigation that we went on, it got pretty wild. And a week later, we went to the Mississippi House, and that's where I met John. And he can kind of pick up there, because up until that moment, I believed in this stuff. I was experiencing it, but I didn't know what I personally could do. And I had never been on a formal investigation before. The one that he and I did before, the one where I met John, we had no clue what we were doing. We didn't have any equipment. I had never been on an investigation. I had never seen one done. I totally went in blind, paid for it dearly. And so John was the first professional investigator that we had. And he pulled me aside later and was like, what is happening? And he kind of gives credibility to the show. And he played hard to get. I had to pursue him pretty hard for several months before he'd agree to come on and help me. But here he is.
That's awesome. So you've been to the Mississippi House, and for those who are listening, there is the documentary, The House in Between. John is part of that group who did that documentary, and it goes over strange happenings in a particular house in Mississippi. Definitely take a look at that that documentary. So you actually took her to the Mississippi House, John?
So actually, what happened was it was coordinated, and I was not even a part of it. So I knew that Stormy Daniels, or I heard that Stormy Daniels was coming to the House in Between, Mississippi House, and I didn't know who Stormy Daniels was.
Yep.
I just knew that there were people coming in. I know now, but I see your drink there, Stormy. Anyway, we have a lot of people in and out of the house. We did tours at the house. So it's interesting with that house, how active it is, how consistent it is. The different energies that you bring in that house, it reacts differently. So like if you have people who are standoffish, maybe they just retreat, maybe there's not much going on, or maybe it's like they're in your face. So you never know what you're going to get when you walk inside that house. That's why I was able to do it for, I guess, going on 12, 13 years now.
Yeah.
It's because every time you go to this location, there's certain entities that are attached to the house and land, but there's also just this revolving carousel of energy that's in that house. And sometimes it's like 0 to 100 real quick. Sometimes it's quiet, and sometimes it's so chaotic you can't wait to get out of there. So Justin, Stormy, and another friend came with them. And, I started out doing a normal tour like we usually do, went over the spiel of the house and let them walk the house. And then we got into a formal investigation. And I've been doing this field for over a decade now. And I've worked with a lot of people in the field, some really credible people. And it's interesting to see the different skill sets that people bring. And what's most intriguing to me is the people who claim they have a skill set, like if you're clairvoyant or a medium or any of that stuff, because the problem is there's a lot of people who claim that don't have the ability, and it kind of muddles the field a little bit,
Right.
I wish I had that skill set. I don't have it. I can hear things every now and then, voices in my ear, this, that, and the other. And that's why what my role is in the paranormal is documentation. So it's audio, it's video, it's basically everything POV that we see. I need to edit it. I need to catch it so I don't ever want to miss a shot. So anyway, we started doing the investigation, and I had no idea this was their first formal investigation. I didn't know because Justin himself is such a natural person in the field asking questions. Usually whenever I lead a tour and start doing like an EVP session, trying to get spirit voices, all that good stuff, usually the people who are on tour are quiet. They sit there, they're reserved. They don't chime in because it's weird talking to yourself if you haven't done it, right? But Justin spoke up, and he kind of just chimed in and was asking really good questions. And then Stormy stands up, and then just all hell breaks loose. So the chandelier, if you watch it in the documentary, is a focal point, a trigger object inside the house that we use. And she was specifically focusing her energy on the chandelier. And the reaction that we got and the response was absolutely amazing. And just watching her throughout the night and seeing her skill set and what she would focus on and the reaction, it just intrigued me because I've never seen somebody with her skill set in the field in the 12 years that I've done the paranormal. So, and again, I had no idea this was her first formal investigation, and she acted like a pro, like she knew what she was doing.
I didn't.
But the raw footage that we got that night was so dramatic. It was the most dramatic things that have happened in the house in a while. So I was just kind of taken back and just perplexed a little bit and confused and intrigued. So after they left, I continued to keep contact with Stormy, and then she told me about the Spooky Babes venture and what their goal was. And what I love about it is, number one, Stormy has such a great reputation. She's known around the world. And I think it's interesting that her skill set is so strong in this field. But when she starts to do this venture, people are intrigued and a little confused of what she's doing in the paranormal. But with her natural skill set, it's so cool to see everything she's able to do. And it's a treat for me as an investigator, because really I call her Scooby-Dooing. So whenever she just kind of wanders off in a location, like we can be in a location having a conversation at 3 a.m. in the kitchen, and she'll just take off walking down the hall mid-sentence, rude as hell. And I'm like, okay. So I know now. I grab my recorder, I grab my gear, and I just follow her. I shut my mouth and I let her do her thing. And it's neat to see the things that she pegs and the stuff that we're able to get on film. So for me, it's like amazing to be able to watch her skill set, and I just document it. So again, like she said, the first time she presented me with the Spooky Babes thing, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in the field after the House in Between, and her concept was so good. I was apprehensive, but I was an idiot at first, but I jumped on board, and I couldn't be happier now. So we really got some really great stuff. The locations that we've done so far are incredible. And in October, we're going to be going out, and I cannot wait to reveal what locations we'll be hitting.
Stormy, you say, you have this, John is saying, and you kind of mentioned it too, or allude to it, like you have this natural ability. So how far back in your life would you say this has gone? And, when you say, we'll have to come back to the blood on the wall thing. I think that's an entire episode all by itself. That to me is, red rum, kind of good stuff. But, when do you feel like you had your first experience, and what was it like? And
I think it's really hard to pinpoint because when you're super young, you don't realize that what you're experiencing is paranormal or that it's different. It's normal. And it's only been very recently that I look back and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's not normal. One of the first things that I remember very clearly, and I can't do this anymore. I remember I was about 3 years old, and I went to what I think was like a testing center, like for placement for kindergarten. And I know that it would trick. I forgot about this until I have a daughter, and we took her to like a preschool, and they like want to figure out which class to put them in. I was like, wait a minute, I've done this. And then I remembered. And it was all the normal stuff, like put the shapes here, do you know your colors, whatever, all of that. And it didn't get weird until the very end, and they brought me in this room, and I was never forget this. And it was this lady sitting across from me, and me and my mom, and she had a pencil, and it was exactly like that scene in The Craft, except way before that movie came out, obviously. And I was about 3 years old, and she held the pencil up by her fingers, and she was like, "Now, can you look at it, and can you do it?" And she moved her hand, but instead of making it spin, I made it do this, and my mom screamed, "Oh shit!" next to me, and it startled me, and I thought I had done something bad, and I haven't been able to do it since. So that's the first thing I remember, and I don't know if that, had an effect on where I went to school or anything like that, but I remember that. And then I had a bunch of stuff happen in high school. I don't remember too far back. But like I said, 1 or 2 big things a year. If you go to our Instagram, you'll see the video of the ceiling, because that's the first thing that I ever caught on film. That's about, let's see, my daughter is turning 10. So that clip is about 11 years old because it was before she was born. And me and my assistant, Dwayne, who's been with me for 12 years, we're staying in a hotel that was not haunted. It was fine. We were there for 3 nights. I had taken a bath earlier that afternoon, laid in the bathtub, stared at the ceiling. Everything was normal. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, we heard a noise, and we went into the bathroom. And when you watch the clip, you'll understand. It's kind of hard to understand what you're looking at, but I'm basically holding my phone like this and filming the ceiling. And it did it over and over. And John's seen the clip. He can tell you it's weird, and I have no explanation for it. But that's on our Instagram. And then just let's see, going to, somebody's house, and I felt really uncomfortable there, and went outside and saw a shadow figure. I think I was like 12. I'm sure if I think hard, I can remember stuff, but all hell broke loose about 1.5 years ago. And then again, when I met John.
Yeah. And I I've said that, I would say it's been about 2 years ago where I would say that people who I would say are sensitive in some way, shape, or form, it seems like those people out of nowhere had started having all these major, like their experiences started to amplify.
Yeah.
And, it seems weird. Like, I don't know if I always say, like, is the veil thin right now or something that that's happening or what, but it does seem like it does, that we're seeing more of it. And it's the same people, like that experience you had where as a child, where you were able to do that with the pencil, where you lock it away, right? Because we're taught it's not okay, or we immediately we think it's wrong, so we stop it and we never do it, like we lose it. but for some reason, it's just coming back lately for a lot of people, I think. So.
Yeah, I have a couple of theories about it. I think, part of it is just the energies are so much higher. People are stressed and there's all that. But another factor is I think because people have been staying in one place. And if you sit still, you listen more and you notice more and things find you. And with everybody on lockdown for so long, they're just sitting quiet. And for instance, the house that I'm in right now, my house here, it's a new construction. I've had it for 6 years. I'm the first person to live here. I used to think the house was kind of strange because it had no energy. It was basically Switzerland. Like I felt nothing here. And now things come and go. And it's partially because I'm, come online, as they tell me. And part of it is that I'm just here. Stuff can find you if you're sitting still, if you're not running errands all day or have friends coming over. If you have a bunch of people hanging out at your house, they're going to be louder than a spirit.
Right.
And everybody's sitting still and being quiet. And I think that people are just kind of picking up on more stuff.
No, that's a fair
I'm wrong. That's my theory.
No, I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah, like they're almost like honing in, like back, like on what they were able to do before.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen like a lot of things, like since you were a kid, and you guys go on like a lot of paranormal investigations, right? So, where else have you guys been on the investigations? Because I know you guys have been to the house in between. So, what other place have you guys been to?
I've been to Sally House twice.
Okay.
And then we've been to the villa, the McIntyre Villa, which is also in Atchison. Went to the Vale Mansion. John actually went with me to my house in New Orleans that I said was super haunted, and he did not like it either. It did not like him either. It was mutual. Let's see, where's the other place that we went? I've been to the distillery in Savannah. Something pretty crazy happened there. That'll be on the show for sure. The Charleston jail, I guess that's considered to be really haunted. I didn't really have too much happen there. Ella's Hotel. And then we leave on October 9th and we're out on the tour bus for a couple of weeks and we're going to all kinds of places. They're pretty excited about. I booked one in particular. I won't say the date we're going there because I'll have weirdos show up. But I booked one in particular just to mess with John because he said it was the only place he'd never go back to. And I'm that kind of a friend.
You are taking me to... Is everybody ready? Here we go. You're taking me to the Villisca Axe Murder House, which I had a horrible experience with that I said I would never go back to, but you're locking me on a tour bus, and I don't know why I agreed to this. This is why I was apprehensive. I knew something in my better judgment was like, don't do it. But anyway, yes, we're going to go back to the Villisca Axe Murder House, and we'll see what happens.
Well, you've been there once before, so maybe this time will be less horrific.
Good. That's the how the glass is half full. I like that.
Yeah.
She's not very convincing though. But at least you'll have backup this time because I'm going with you and we'll have Susan on the bus. I'm not bringing her in there. I can't have anything happen to her. But we're bringing Connor. And so we have on our crew, we have a demonologist, exorcist. I don't even know how to describe him, but he'll be with us on that one. So John,
truly incredible. Connor is a very interesting guy. So if you ever want to book him on a podcast, that would be a conversation that you would not be bored with.
Well, no. Well, now we have to.
Yeah, now we do have to.
I mean, he texted me like he's the only one in our group that's not in the group thread because he's always off doing Connor things that we don't really know what they are. But every time he texts me, I'm like, okay, I have to sit down to read this. He texted me today and I had to read it 4 times before I was like, okay.
Like, okay, as in I finally understand, or like, okay, that was a lot to like process and take in.
Yes, all of that.
All of the above.
Today that I actually had to read it to myself out loud so that I could understand it.
Oh, wow.
and then, yeah, wow. But yeah, so we're going out. We're doing a lot of really, really neat locations. And I'll tell you what, the one location that we've done, and I'm not going to go into detail, but one of the coolest locations that we've done that I'm so excited about is the villa that we did in Kansas. I mean, one of my favorite movies is Clue, 1985. So it shows my age, good old 80s movie. But this house reminds me of the Clue house. Like, it's just such a neat place, and it's just never ending. And the energy that's in that house is truly, truly incredible. So I'm excited to get on the road and see what else we investigate and document. And what's neat about Spooky Babe Show is that it's not cast like your typical shows are. You know, you go audition, they put you together, you have to act like you like each other. And, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But what translates on film needs to be genuine. And that's why The House in Between was so successful, because it was Alice's story. We are friends. We are family. We know each other. So it translated well, and it was a great story. But that's the same thing with Spooky Babes, is because, I mean, we're all best friends. Justin, Stormy, myself, Connor. I mean, we talk every day, all the time.
Aww.
We're always plotting. We're always planning. And
Plotting?
This is self-funded. So we have creative control. And what's neat is also with COVID, we can be COVID safe and friendly and still get out on the road and film and do what we need to do. So we're just gaining content. We're putting everything together. So it's such a fun place to be. And with Stormy leading the way, there's never a dull moment.
John, I want to know what's worse, the axe murder house or my house in New Orleans that you went into?
So small batch, because I was only inside that house, the New Orleans house, for a short time. But so I'm still going to say Villisca.
Okay.
That house,
I love my house.
Yes. And the thing is, I think there was a miscommunication when we went to the New Orleans house. But I don't know. When I walked up there in that certain area of the house, my back was against the wall. And I got aggressive. And I'm not usually aggressive at all. But it changed my demeanor. So whenever we left, that was confusing to me, which I don't like myself like that. I'm too small to be aggressive, because if I get aggressive, I'm getting my ass beat.
Well, we've already established that you're flight and not fight.
Yeah,
that is true. So factual story: if we do get scared, again, you either are flight or fight, which means you either run or you're
now.
Stormy is fight, which you could probably guess. I am flight, which I will pick her up and throw her on the couch and run out of the room.
He did that to me.
Just get out of the way. I'm going.
No, he was like, take her and
take her. I don't want to be here.
To be fair, I was going to get a camera at the same time. So my motto is, we can never miss a shot. That is our motto. Never miss a shot.
From the window outside. Yeah, no, I'm with you.
This is fair.
Yeah.
This is fair.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
John screams like a girl, just so you know. We have lots of footage of it.
Yep, that's all right.
You know what? It's good TV, so I'm okay with it. I'm secure.
The other cool thing about the show is that we're going to have an aftercare program. And that's one of the things that kind of sets us apart. Because if you go into a house and you do an investigation, even if you debunk everything, and you're like, you have mold or you have loud pipes or your neighbor's playing pranks on you, like even if there's absolutely nothing paranormal there whatsoever, the trauma is still real, especially if there's children involved. Okay. And sometimes you get to a location and the place is so messed up that people need to move. But when you watch the other paranormal shows, most of them don't really, they're like, thank you for letting me film your house. Sorry about your ghost. Peace out.
Yeah.
And I just could never, I mean, John knows me pretty well now. There's no way I could walk away from a situation like that with somebody and leave them there when they don't have the means to move, because some people just can't afford to move. And there's just no way I could ever do that, which is why we're not going to go to a lot of private places, because I would go broke trying to help everybody. Because I can't say no when people need help, which is kind of a problem. But we have healers on board, so there's a whole separate part of the show. Anya, one of our girls, is, she's going to be she's a Reiki practitioner. Same thing with my friend Lisa. She's also a yoga instructor. We have all these other techniques, and we want to teach people how to deal with it and process the trauma and speak to their relatives if there needs to be like a mediation. And also, I believe, like we talked about earlier, once something does happen to you, you're sort of on, and it's going to keep happening. So even if we go someplace and Connor does some sort of exorcism and we clear the energy there's a very, very good chance that that person is going to have a reoccurrence of something else. So you want to teach people how to protect themselves and things like that. So that's the part of the show that I have to get through this part so that I have people to help. But that was a major part of my motivation because I saw firsthand the toll that this took on myself, my relationship. I was very, very much in love with this person, and he doesn't even speak to me anymore. And he has residual problems that he's not even facing.
No, I think that is actually that is a key piece. And I know that we've had conversations about that where like, it does bother me where people just go into the house or like, yep, and they tape it and they make, they get their million views or they get their TV show on it and what have you, and then they're hosed, right? Like they're stuck there. Like everybody's great but them, still typically, or so to me that's always been a challenge with this. So I think that's awesome that you do that.
How did you and Justin meet? Because I knew that you guys both lived in New Orleans. So I thought, like, oh, that's kind of neat. Like, they both live in, like, New Orleans. So I just kind of, like, wanted to know, like, how did you two meet?
Okay, so this is a pretty crazy story. Okay, I'm probably going to give the abbreviated version because the real story is too crazy. Like, people wouldn't believe it. Justin lived in New Orleans. And there was a bar not too far from my house that was actually a gay karaoke bar. And I used to go there all the time because I knew the bartender and I was safe. Like no one's going to mess with me in like going to a regular bar with people in New Orleans. And I went there all the time. And this particular night before I left the house, my daughter was saying like, we got to get, my ex had already moved out. We were there alone. I was in like the worst of the worst in the thick of this house. And she made a joke that we should get a pet wolf to take care of me and like guard me or whatever. And I was like, okay. So I go to this bar and I walk in and Justin is singing karaoke. And I was instantly smitten because he's beautiful and talented and looks like every guy I've ever dated. And I asked my friend, the bartender, who is that guy? I had no idea how old he was because he seems much more mature. And he was like, I don't know, but back off, bitch. He's mine. And so long story short, me and the bartender bet $50 who was going to bring Justin home. And it sounds so much worse than it is because I got the $50, but all we did was go back to my house and talk about paranormal stuff for like 10 hours. Justin and I are strictly friends. We've only been friends. And it was during that night that we started talking, and come to find out his last name is French for wolf. And when we got there, my daughter was like, about time you showed up. Yeah. John, tell me what we're doing in October.
I don't know. What are we doing in October? Just kidding. So we're doing a lot of investigations, a lot of locations, but we've been wanting, and we've been toying around the idea of doing public investigations, with COVID, everybody's being, scared and all that good stuff. So we decided we would be COVID friendly. We put a lot of stuff together. We took a lot of time in planning and preparation, but our first public investigation where you can actually come investigate with Stormy and Justin and even John is in...
Oh, yeah.
And Susan.
Can't forget about Susan.
Is in Louisiana. So we're doing the Bonnie and Clyde Ambush Museum and the kill site. So we're excited about that. So you can actually get tickets. If you go to SpookyBabesShow.com, you can actually get tickets there. There are VIP tickets where you can come in an hour early. You get extra merchandise that's signed. That's pretty cool. And there's also an extra VIP because we're going to be on a tour bus. You actually can come hang out with us for an hour-ish. It's an hour until, and you actually get to meet Susan, hanging out with Susan. You get to talk about the investigation, get to hang out with us on the bus. What'd you say?
I said it's in the after party.
It's the after party. But yeah, so October 30th, the night before Halloween, Bonnie and Clyde Ambush Museum, SpookyBabesShow.com. You can get tickets. We're really excited about that. We'll be doing a podcast. And actually, that's another thing that we do, which is Taking the World by Stormy podcast that Stormy's had for a while. And it ranges from paranormal to just, we did a show with her bodyguard that'll be coming up that's got some really interesting stories. And it's broad all over the spectrum. But we actually have a new episode that comes out tonight at 9:00 Central, right? So, and we actually have David Childers, who's been an investigator for 2 decades. He's been on Ghost Adventures and pretty much every show that you could think of, he's been on. But we actually did the podcast inside a haunted location at the McNutt House in Vicksburg, so that was pretty cool. So you can listen to that on iTunes, Spotify, all the good stuff. So check that out as well.
Thank you both for coming out. John, we always love seeing you again. Thank you so much, Stormy, for being here. And as always, Paramera signing out.